Alright, this is John Colo with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. And here standing on my roof, so you guys can get an overview shot of my part of my backyard garden this summer here. And in my backyard, instead of like the next door neighbor that you guys can see behind me, basically rock landscaping. They do nothing with their backyard or their space that does anything for them except maybe not having to create more work for them by having to pull weeds. I'm choosing to do something different, and I want to encourage you guys to do something different as well on your property. We all, if you guys are renting or owning, you have some property, some space on a balcony. If you have an apartment or condo, or even if you don't have space on a balcony or in an apartment or condo, you could grow indoors on shelves, sprouts and microgreens. But what I'm choosing to do in my backyard, as you guys can see behind me, is actually grow a bunch of food. And you know, it's a fact that we can survive without air for maybe, I don't know, what, 6 minutes? We can survive without water for, I don't even know how many days, 3 days, depends. But we can survive without food for 30 days. But that being said, nobody does that. We all eat and we all gorge ourselves unnecessarily on high calorie, low nutrient foods. So I want to do the opposite of that. I want to, you know, give myself the highest quality, lowest calorie foods, and that's simply by growing my vegetables in my backyard. It's these vegetables and fruits is the foods that I want you guys to focus your diets around. You know, don't focus your diets around meat. I don't think that's so healthy. And if you look at the healthcare crisis that's going on, many of the common diseases of today are because of the overconsumption of processed foods and animal products. And it's not due to the consumption of fruits and vegetables. The problem is actually the underconsumption of fruits and vegetables. So bring those fruits and vegetables back into your diet, into your life, and especially you'll find that if you grow them, you're going to eat more of them like I am doing. So what we're going to do next is actually get off the roof before I fall off and take you guys on a tour of my summer garden here in the desert to show you guys, even in 100+ degree weather, you can have a bountiful and flourishing garden. So if I could do it here, then you guys could grow most anywhere. And I'll be sharing my tips with you guys on how I'm able to be successful growing in 110+ degrees in the summer. So in this episode. So anyways, let's go ahead and get off the roof and show you guys around on the tour of my backyard garden this summer. So now we're gonna go ahead and give you guys a tour. So this is the first side of the garden that I started with these round circular raised beds I got at Walmart. They're like 10 bucks and they've served me well. Some of them have deteriorated over the years. Some of them got cracked. I taped them up, and I think 1 or 2 of them I had to replace with some spares I bought. But this side is the side that actually has a drip irrigation on it, and it's all running on timer at current rate. It goes off like I think 5 times during the day for small you know, amounts of time, but 5 times during the day. So like maybe it goes like 11. It comes on for a little bit and then it turns off, and then it like at 1 because it gets hot, and then I want to try to like cool the root zone down. The watering cycle comes on again, then maybe at like 3, so maybe like every 2 hours. And as you guys can see, I must be doing something right. So this is good. Anyways, onto the plants. This first raised bed, what I grew in this one is basically basil. So I started these basils. Most of them were from 6-packs and like small 6-packs, and now these guys are huge. Probably pushing like 2 feet plus tall. And besides the basil, in here I grew just standard green onions, which are surviving through the heat. Some of them got buried in between the basil that you can't see, and some of them are on the outside edge, and we've just been coming out here and harvesting green onions whenever we want, and we have tons of basil. So normally I'm pretty lazy on my basil, on like you know, on topping my basil when it's going to flower or deadheading it. And this year I'm like, okay, John, let's get up on the deadheading. Let's see if it makes a difference. So normally I just let it go to flower and see what happens, and then I don't really have that much basil to harvest. But let me tell you, you know, deadheading your basil really works. I deadhead until I see no more flower buds shooting out or coming out, and really, you really get a lot more leaves to harvest. So that's really cool. And the challenge this year, I've had a lot of thrips. Here's one right here. But I had a lot of thrips on my stuff. But yeah, the basil is doing great, as is the green onions below it. Let's go ahead and continue on to some other beds. This next bed is kind of a wild bed, and this bed has some sunchokes or Jerusalem artichokes that have escaped. They're pushing 10 feet tall now. And this had a bunch of tree collards. I lost some of them this year. There's still one left. Let's see, I got a goji berry plant that's in here that's just growing wild. It's currently flowering. Got a lot of fruit off it this year. Pretty much don't do anything. This is kind of a shady spot. And then that's kind of the top story. And then the understory, down by the bottom, I have all kinds of mint. So I have a standard peppermint. Looks like I have some cat mint and also some chocolate mint down at the bottom. And then also in here we got some dinosaur kale hiding. That I did have some problems with caterpillars early in the year and some aphids, and it looks like I finally got those under control by basically just spraying water on it and picking off the caterpillars. So let's see here. Oh, this bed behind right here, basically what we grew in this one is I grew a tomato plant up the middle in a trellis that I've been getting pretty bad hornworms this year. I'm trying to stay up on. And then also I think I got a volunteer, like maybe bitter melon come up. And then all around the base I have peppers and some eggplants planted. This year in my containers between my raised beds, what I have is a dandelion, and then this is a volunteer kind of sunflower, and then I planted some mint recently. I've been using mint a lot in my green smoothies quite often. Alright, onto this bed here. This bed is a mixed bed with all kinds of edible summer greens. So we have some dinosaur kale here. We got things like the Swiss chard. I also planted the Egyptian spinach, which is doing quite well. More chard, dandelion, some celery. Got some stevia that's growing really nicely here. Also, I see some stinging nettles in here. Also, don't forget about the moringa. Some random onions all in there. And some mint, yeah. And some basil. Just started sticking stuff in there. And then this is another summer greens bed. So this has a lot more of the moringa, some okra, some Egyptian spinach, and also my popolo. This is the Mexican popolo variety. I like to use this in place of cilantro that bolts too quickly in the summertime. I also had some zucchinis grow in this bed that just didn't quite do so well. Let's see, also in here I have some, I think some edible hibiscus hiding somewhere. And let's see, this next bed here, we got the perennial walking onions, and I just harvested all the perennial walking onions. Be sure to check the link down below to my store because I'll be selling the perennial walking onions top set, so you guys could plant those and have your own bed of perennial onions that just grow year-round. So in my climate they grow year-round. This is what they look like. Looks like I missed one. These are the top sets that form, and then on the top sets they actually start to sprout out. This is a little green sprout coming out, but you could plant each individual clove or the whole thing, and this will just come up, and then next year they'll actually create a top set. These top sets will dump over in the ground and sprout, and then create more plants, and then basically they'll walk across your field or your yard. I harvest them all so they don't really get to walk too many places. Yeah, so that's the walking onions. Maybe I'll bury these guys in the middle here and have some more for next year. And then in the middle this year, my yacon didn't do so well. It's really having a hard time. Last year it grew much better. I think maybe it's not getting quite enough water. And then this next bed, mainly we grew a lot of peppers in here. And also had some volunteer shiso, and also this is my bed with stinging nettles. So the stinging nettles just come up wild. I cut them back every season to the ground and leave the roots underneath, and they keep coming back. And I've been coming out maybe weekly and harvesting all the top tips and turning that into a smoothie for me to eat. This next bed basically had a tomato in the middle that didn't make it, and then I have eggplants all around the base with some dandelions on the bottom and a little bit of basil too. And then this next bed is another bed with greens. So, oh man, this is the first I've seen this. My hibiscus over here is having some disease challenges, potentially some rust or something. I should get on that. But the edible hibiscus leaves, and then this is the popolo. This is the standard Mexican popolo, and then I got the Bolivian poplar, which has a thinner leaf and is kind of like purple or bluish. I like that a lot more. Then over on the bottom, I got just some random tomatoes that came up, and I got more of the Egyptian spinach happening. And then also have some Moringa here, and then a lot more Egyptian spinach along the back. So I experimented this year with shading out some of my crops, you know, because I planted some things like right in the middle of July when it's like 100+ degrees. So to help them get transplanted in properly, I shaded them out, which helped them out, and then I just got too lazy to take off the shade cloth. But things have been growing all right. In this bed, this is basically a volunteer Armenian cucumber. This is the first one I'm seeing. Here's a little baby coming out right here. It's really cool. And this is, I trellis this up. Oh look, I got a cucumber right here. That's the first one. I hadn't seen this yet. A baby Armenian striped cucumber. This is a volunteer that just came up, and I trellised it up and on these trellises, and then actually I ran a bamboo pole all the way up on top of my structure, and now it's just growing up there wild. So that's really cool when it does that. And let's go ahead and continue around. So this is the other side of the bed with my cucumbers trellised up. That came in later, and then what this bed was supposed to be was basically all peppers. Down below I had some issues once again with some hornworms that got some of my plants, but I mean these guys are just doing all right. The next bed here basically has all my okra. That was a late season planting for like I think July, so it's actually doing quite well. I think it's almost about to bud out and make some okra, and that's the top story. And then the understory all along the bottom, I have all this wild arugula that I'm learning grows really well in the summer. I clip it back so it doesn't flower, or when it did flower I clipped it all back, and now I have all this baby wild arugula growing. Now the wild arugula, it's actually quite strong, so I like to just snip off a few leaves here and there and add it into stuff. But to me it has like a really nice flavor. For some of you guys, you might have to get used to it. Alright, moving on, this is my raised bed with my tomato plants. As you guys can see, I used a cage upright and the cage upside down to go all the way up. I don't know, they're probably like pushing 10 feet tall all the way up. And this is the one that I protected with netting, bird netting, for $1 so the birds don't get in there. It's definitely prevented the birds from getting in there, but the downside is it also has prevented me from getting in there, because I get too lazy to like take up the clips and move this up and get in there and harvest. So I'm basically just letting my tomatoes get sun-dried on the vine instead of having me take them off and then put them in the dehydrator. I'm just letting the sun do it, and I'll go in there one of these days. What I'm thinking about doing is I'm thinking about taking this off, because I've been using some alternative bird deterrents, and I'll show you guys one of them in a minute, and I'm going to be using 2 more, and so maybe I'll be taking this off to see if actually those bird deterrents work. Yeah, I mean, I learned this is cool if you want to protect it from the birds, but you know, it's kind of a pain to take off, so I got to figure out a better way to like easily move it up and down if I'm gonna do this next year. Oh, I gotta show you guys this. So for people that say you can't grow tomatoes in Las Vegas in the middle of summer, they're wrong. Normally my tomatoes do really poorly, but this is one of my best plants. You guys can see, I mean, it's just loaded up with all kinds of tomatoes in here. Some of them are cracking because we got some rain recently, and I'm gonna harvest these pretty soon. But the sad thing is I forget the variety of this because I don't know where the tag went. But it's actually done quite well, and this is probably one of the best plants I've had all year. Over a dozen fruits on this. I did grow patio tomatoes earlier in the season that I've already ripped out because they were looking nasty, and they did all right until it got really hot, but then they failed. This guy's still hanging on actually, and look at the top here, you can see he's still actually flowering out, and maybe gonna make some more fruit for me. Generally I'm not a big fan of growing tomatoes in the desert. They just don't do quite as well as what I'm used to. So I try to focus on other crops that are good. This is a mixed herb slash perennial bed, and my basil, which is crazy, is getting eaten badly by something. I haven't come over here to check it out recently, but it's really getting eaten. Normally basil doesn't get eaten so much. I must be providing good habitat for some creature. But yeah, this is a mixed bed with different tree collards in here and different herbs, some seeds that I got to harvest from celery. It's got some oregano, some rue, oh, my or my Chinese chives. They're doing quite well over here. I haven't been over here to see them for a while. Got to harvest some of this stuff and eat. They're quite good. So over here, my hot and spicy oregano went to flower and seed. So these are like the little seed pod things it produced. These are dried, and like here's ones that are fresh. They smell really cool, and I like to just pop these guys off and like put them in recipes. And in this little small container here, I just got a bunch of nice dandelions ready to harvest. I grow dandelions in the pots year round, and so I always have some ready along with the mint. And then I also got the lemongrass in here, as well as some of my purple tree collards. Oh, and then this bed here, this had some leeks in it. You guys can kind of see the remnants of what's left in here. This had leeks in it. Some are still doing all right. Some I need to harvest and use. And then in the bottom of this is all like heirloom sugar beets. So the sugar beets, they're getting kind of big. Here's one of them right here. They're just heirloom white sugar beets, so I'm just letting them grow. Before they go to flower, I'm going to harvest them all. How have they been doing in the heat? Well, in the extreme heat, they really weren't liking it. They died back, but now that it's gotten cooler, it looks like they're putting off some new growth, and they're liking it pretty good. All right, this next bed here is one of my favorites. Let's see, around the back, I got some Egyptian spinach, but around the front here, this is all 100% volunteer Shiso. And I forget the variety. I think this is the Breton variety. It's green on the top, purple on the back side. And these are all volunteers, and I mean they're pushing 6 feet tall now. I'm standing up to here, and it's like up to my nose. But yeah, all these leaves are edible. Probably gonna harvest a bunch of these and maybe dry them and see how they are dried. I like to put these fresh into different salads and soups and things, but it does have a rather strong flavor that you might need to get used to. But I've really liked, and you know, this season that I've learned that this guy really does well, and this is one of those hands-off crops. Like, if you just want to be able to grow something and not have to like worry about it, this is it. Like, I haven't really worried about anything. It barely gets any bugs. It grows great on its own. Just give it some water, and the seeds just germinated on their own too, so that was awesome. Let's see, this next bed here, I got a tomato plant in the middle somewhere, and peppers all the way around the base. These next two beds, we got some green tree collards, my purple tree collards, and this bed didn't make it. Also have some sage that I just can't get to go away, as well as some rosemary that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And also have some other herbs down in the bottom of this. That's mainly what I got in here. And then over on this side, we got this is my basil bed, so I have probably about a dozen different kinds of basil mixed in here. I got my katuk that I think is probably about on its way out. I don't even know. I think it's barely hanging on, if it's even alive still. My Egyptian spinach, once again, this Egyptian spinach, you know, once again, it's pushing 6 feet tall now, really tall. The other day I came in and topped it all. So I topped all the branches that were coming off. I just basically clipped off all the ends, and we ate them, and now it's actually shooting out new growth faster than ever. So that was good. Okay, also in this bed, got some Gynera procumbens, and this one's called the oyster plant, which I haven't harvested yet, and some large leaf purslane. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, just lots of different kinds of basil mainly in this bed, and I've been trying to go around and keep them topped off. Looks like I got a little bit more work to do. All right, let's go ahead and show you guys actually two more raised beds on this side of the yard. So last two raised beds, this is number one, and this one had garlic. I didn't harvest the garlic till like late in the season, and then once I did, basically had some volunteer tomatoes that I trellised up, and some Malabar spinach that I trellised up, and then I'm trying to get it over to go to this little netting thing that I created over here. But other than that, I planted like, I think maybe 4 purple sweet potatoes in here that were budding out, and now this whole bed is just full of purple sweet potato vine, and I'm gonna have definitely some sweet potatoes underneath the ground. Another very easy crop to grow is the sweet potatoes. I mean, it seems like the hotter it gets, the more these guys grow. And I really haven't done anything to these. They barely get any pest or damage. You could actually also harvest and cook the sweet potato vines to eat and use it as a leafy green. I haven't done that myself personally, and I do know there are varieties specifically of sweet potatoes that are not actually grown for the tuber, but are actually grown for the leaves. And those are the ones that actually I want to get instead of just eating the common sweet potato leaves cooked. So yeah, I think that's pretty much. Oh, and then this guy over here, this is the last bed on this side. And what I have in here are mostly this guy. This guy just keeps coming back every summer. Doesn't like the winter, doesn't like the cold, but it comes back every summer. This is called the Oha Santa, or the root beer plant. You could use these greens for wrapping vegetables in. And then I have some Texas tarragon in here. And then down on the bottom, I have lots of different things, mints, and basically some Chinese chives, and some celery going on. Oh, and the cat mint I planted over here for Kitty, and some I planted some new green tree collards and some parsley. Now we're gonna head to the other side of my yard, but before we do, basically this is my flood table. It's a 4 foot by 8 foot flood table. Basically I have it flood out like once a day for 15 minutes. The water level rises, basically all the pots in here get nice and wet. The water drains out, and then it stays wet. The water basically evaporates over the next 23 hours or whatever that it's dry, and then it gets flooded again, the next day. So on this half, I've been growing my Ashitaba starts. I also have some of the caper plants that actually I got just a month ago. They've probably doubled in size in this setup here. They really love this setup. Got some eggplants that we're doing all right in this setup, but I think they're really I need to move their pot size up. They're too constricted. And then over on this side, I got things like lettuce, parsley, tree collards, toothache plant or spilanthes, and some other mints or another herbs that I need to plant out, for this upcoming fall season over in my flood table. All right, let's move on to this side of the yard. So these two raised beds are about 4 feet by about 16 feet tall or long. They have mostly peppers with some tomatoes. So I trellis the tomatoes up and above the peppers so they don't shade out my peppers. These are 100% volunteers. I did not plant them in there. Oh, and the other thing I want to show you guys is this stuff. So you may see these things like flopping in the wind and whatnot. And these are like some reflective, like mylar, like tape stuff with like prism stuff on there. And it's supposed to keep the birds away. So I definitely will say for about the first 3 weeks, like I had no bird problems. I had like full-on tomatoes, and this was blowing, sparkling, and like there's no birds. But I think they figured it out, and now I'm getting some bird damage. I think the thing is, like, when the wind blows, they don't come, but if the wind's still and this is not reflecting the light, then they come. The other thing you'll notice, if you look up above me, this is totally new. I didn't make a video on this when I put it up because I just needed to get it up. Basically, I have a 30% shade cloth now over a 10 foot by 20 foot section of my garden. I tried this because another gardener, the artistic gardener in Vegas, actually, who I admire a lot and admire the work she's doing, was getting some better performance on some of her crops than I was. So I was a bit jealous, and she adds a lot of stuff to the soil and does constant nutritional sprays on the foliar sprays, which is definitely good. I probably should be doing more of that. But the other thing that she's doing that I think may be making a difference was the shade cloth. And she had reported to me that there's studies that show increases in yields when using a shade cloth. And so, I'm not going to say it's always good to use a shade cloth or it's never good to use a shade cloth. It depends on the situation. This year I started using the shade cloth, and I think I have seen my production go up a little bit, but I didn't put this shade cloth over until maybe like I don't know, just a few weeks ago. And I will say that I was getting some burn on some of my pepper plants that I think I've dealt with that situation now that I got the shade cloth up. But yeah, my peppers are looking pretty good in here. Some of them got jacked up, like this section in here got really jacked up by tomato hornworms, which evidently also like peppers, so they took a couple of my plants out. But if we move on over here, they're looking a lot better and doing a lot better over here. So yeah, it's these two beds, and then this bed against the back. I have a video that I don't think I posted yet about the shade cloth on this, but I had cucumbers along here. All along here I had cucumbers, and most of my cucumbers this year didn't make it, so I had a crop failure. And I replanted the cucumbers once, and maybe like one plant's left from the second replanting, and so that's not so good. What did do good, of course, are my Egyptian spinach that I planted from seeds when it was 100+ degrees out. They're doing good. And then my Moringa. The Moringa tree I planted over here is doing the best, so this is probably like the driest and place, and it's growing really well. I then just recently planted some beans and some more cucumbers to trellis up and see how they grow, if I could get a crop in this last half of the next few months until we get a frost. Now the thing that's done the best against this bed here are these guys. I don't know if you guys see these. Who can name what this is? I'll give you 5 seconds. All right, I'll tell you. So anyways, these guys did the best, and maybe next year I might plant just a whole row of these guys, because you know, no matter the sun, the weather, the heat, these guys kept growing. I mean, you guys could see they're just popping out of this thing here. It's just so tall. And this I planted like just because it was sprouting in my kitchen after I bought it. So it was actually a jicama that actually started growing, and by the time I caught it, it was like 2 feet long in my kitchen. And then I just put it in the ground, and now it's just grown in this huge plant. So I'll see how it's producing more jicama root bulb things under the ground later. And I do want to caution you guys, if you do grow jicama, don't eat the leaves or the beans it produces. They are quite toxic. These are also known as yam bean. Only the root is edible. Now along the base here, I also planted some from volunteers. I planted some Malabar spinach that I just dug up and planted in. About half of them took. And in the back here, I got some mint that I just trimmed back. That was kind of going crazy. And I think that's pretty much it for this this whole area. Oh, and then I got these guys that are just coming up randomly in my garden now. This is known as a water pepper. Then along the back, I did a video with some of these guys. Let's see, this is my cactus, doing really well under irrigation. I water it every day, and it's put on a lot of growth. I ate a pad just the other night. And along the back here, I have grapes that I've been growing. I've been getting the grape leaf skeletonizers, and I have the woolly aphids on here that I need to deal with. And I've been trying to spray them with water, and I think I need to escalate it up to like spray with neem and Dr. Bronner's. I've just been too lazy. And then let's see, in between I had some tree collards that probably didn't make it. And then along here I got the Moringa. I got more of the edible hibiscus that has some disease and need to treat. And then along the base here I planted from seed all this Egyptian spinach. And these guys are doing quite well. You guys can see, like, I have a little, you know, field of Egyptian spinach here. All the summer greens you could eat. I love Egyptian spinach more than I like lettuce, actually. Let's see, I got some kumquat trees at Costco. And I don't know, they've been having some challenges. I water them twice a day. And I don't know, they haven't been liking the heat so much. So this is my rear 4 foot by 8 foot raised bed. This has peppers. So as you guys can see, these peppers in this bed are probably doing the best. This kind of gets pretty much morning sun and afternoon shade. I think they really like it because, like, check out the ones here. I'm standing on the ground, and these are my pepper plants above me. I mean, they're at least I don't know, a couple feet taller than me. So these plants are pushing like 6 feet tall peppers. These are definitely creating some records for me, because these are the tallest pepper plants I've ever grown in one season. And we still got you know, a few more months to go. And then over on this side we have a chayote vine. I didn't plant chayote this year. I planted it last year, so it actually came back and sprouted up on its own. So you could eat the tips of these guys. You could just harvest them and put them in salads, and we'll see if these guys fruit. Also in this bed, basically a whole bunch of Malabar spinach came up from seeds that were just dropped from last year, and then I put this trellis in. They're climbing up the trellis quite nicely. And then inside the bed I basically have crops from my summer, my winter garden left over, and they're probably mostly collard greens that are taking the heat quite well. Definitely had some challenges with some caterpillars. I think I got it under control now, so a lot of my leaves look like Swiss cheese. And let's go ahead and keep moving. And over here, this is a volunteer. And this is the Bolivian papalo. So I harvested this the other night to make a guacamole. Harvested all the tips. So I just harvest the tips, and then they basically reshoot and make more. And this guy is probably pushing like 3.5, 4 feet now. Doing quite well. And yeah, I mean, here's some good side of my pepper bed. You guys can see, like, some of these peppers are really coming in really nicely. Lots of different peppers. Here's a plant that's doing quite well. Probably my favorite variety of peppers to grow this year. Here's one that has like 1, 2, 3. I don't know if you guys can see 4 or 5 on the plant. So this variety, my favorite variety to grow this season, is the sweet banana. It's done the best for me this year. I've grown mostly sweet peppers with some mild hot peppers, but no super hot ones like I have in the past. I also grew a lot of bell peppers for fun this season to see what would happen. And most of them actually aren't producing that well for me, but this is not a surprise because generally those ones haven't performed well for me in the desert, but I thought I'd give another try. All right, I think we got one more bed to show you guys before we're gonna end off this video. So the last bed is kind of one of my perennial beds that I don't really mess with too much and haven't really actually even planted too many things in this summer season. This is the Canna Adalis or Akira. It makes edible tubers on the ground that you could eat raw or cooked, and it makes all these really cool seeds. It's actually done quite well. We're gonna crawl through here in my jungle. And also in this bed, I don't know, we got this thing, which is a weed. I don't know what it is. It just keeps growing. I haven't done anything. Haven't cleaned up this bed or anything. We got some sunchokes, some dinosaur kale. Oh, and my turmeric. My turmeric's growing quite well in the back here. This is probably its first, like, third year, maybe going on third year growing. Oh, and then my tree collards. So these are the best tree collards I have. You know, in the past when somebody would ask me, John, can I plant tree collards in full sun? And I'd say, yeah, you know, I have some in full sun and some in the shade, and each of them kind of do their own thing. At some point, you know, the ones in full sun did really well, and then those kind of went the way of the west, and this guy's in kind of partial shade, and it's actually doing quite well. And the thing I noticed, especially in the summer when it's really hot, is like when I upped the watering on this, it really got a lot healthier, which means to me that I was actually underwatering it. And this could happen with any of your plants, right? Your plants could be either getting not enough water, just enough water, or too much water. And I would bet you dollars to donuts that most of the time your plants are either getting too little or too much. Because to get that just right amount, it's tough, even for me. So I hope that new technologies with you know, moisture sensors and you know, things that could monitor the moisture in the ground next to the plant come out and make this easier so that you guys could be more successful in gardening. And as it is, in some of my beds, I think I'm actually overwatering, and some I may be underwatering still. But this is all a learning process, and even though I have a nice thriving garden, I know there's things that I can improve on. And likewise, I want you guys, every season you guys grow, notice things. See what does well, see what doesn't do well. See what part of your yard certain things grow better and what part of your yard certain things grow worse. Like, you know, certain plants grow better in full sun and they don't like, you know, more shade, but some of them like shade. And just as a gardener, you just got to learn and observe. And this is like one of the main things that I'm doing every day, is just learning, observing, and then applying what I've learned and observed, you know, the following season. And it helps that I actually make videos like this to remind myself what happens in case I forget. I don't usually forget too many things, but also I'm glad I could make this for you guys to share with you guys, you know, what's really grown well for me in the hot summer season here. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, hey, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. Let me know. I'll be sure to do tour videos every season. Generally, I do them in the you know, winter and summer. Those are my two main seasons here. I have two distinct seasons. Also, be sure to share this video with somebody that lives in a desert climate who thinks they can't grow. You could definitely grow, as you guys saw in this episode today, if you grow the right things and plant them at the right time, and make sure you have an automatic irrigation system. Don't try to hand water all this stuff. That's a recipe for disaster. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below to be notified of my new upcoming episodes I have coming out about every 3 to 4 days. And be sure to check my past episodes. My past episodes are a wealth of knowledge so that you guys could learn how you guys could grow your own food at home. I have videos on how I put in these raised beds on this side of the yard with the concrete blocks. I have videos on how I set up the original 4-foot circular raised beds from start to finish. And I mean, that's just why I'm here. I'm just here to show you guys what I do, and maybe it just might, you know, create some inspiration, which in turn might create some perspiration for you guys when you're building some gardens and growing some food for yourselves and your family. So once again, my name is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep on growing. All right, this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Could have been another exciting episode for you here, coming at you from the backyard garden here. And every day it's been over 100 degrees, maybe except for last week. There's a